has been asking for an updated template, something that's scalable and in PDF. So I decided to make a new set of templates, something that's a little bit easier to work with. And let's just jump right into it. Why don't we? I've already got all my paper templates cut out, and I've transferred the patterns over to some 5mm craft foam. And after I did that, I went through and cut out all my inner patterns. And then I went through and made sure I put all those down. Some of these inner patterns are going to be accents that I'm going to cut out, and some of them are going to be burnt on with a wood burner. Like these ear pieces right here, I'm just going to cut that out on another piece of foam and glue that on top. So far, I've got all my patterns traced out onto 2 sheets of 5mm craft foam. As for these pieces, these are the back piece. I went and cut roughly outside the line just a little bit. This gives me enough room to glue it under other pieces, which you'll see here later on in the video. Now this is the forehead, the top of the faceplate. Cut the outer sides in an inward angle. That way when I glue the side pieces, they will have this slight bevel angle. And then I went through and cut some inner patterns out for the faceplate, which is going to be cut in a V-groove undercut. And I'm going to put some contact cement in there and glue it on, and it's going to bevel just like that. Here is the mouth plate, the lower face plate. I cut these lines right here in an inward angle cut. And this is the top piece. I cut the center line in a straight cut, and the outer line I did cut in an inward angle cut. This will join up to the side of the helmet. And right here I am cutting out the side pieces of the helmet. This is like the ear area, and right here I am cutting out the jawline and the chin area. I cut these 3 lines right here in an inward angle cut, which is going to join up to the chin area. This is the chin area. I cut the outer lines in an inward angle. I flipped it over and drew in some lines. I'm going to make some V-groove undercuts, and then this line right here is going to be burnt in with a wood burner, and it's going to look something like this once I get it all glued down. And now it's time to assemble all these pieces together. I've already applied all my contact cement and let it dry to attack. I'm going to start off by attaching the side pieces to the mouthpiece. The side pieces were cut in a straight cut all the way around. That way when I glued it onto the mouthpiece, it gave me this bevel look. And then I'm going to move along and work on the forehead, which is about the same thing. You just glue on the side pieces, and the same goes for the side pieces up here. I just went ahead and cut in a straight cut. Then I glued it to the top faceplate, which had an inward angle cut, which gave me this bevel look. I went ahead and did the other side the same way. I used the surface of my table to make sure that my seams are really nice and smooth, and then after I was done that, I went and pressed in that V-groove undercut that I made earlier. That gave me this bevel thing. Now as for this piece right here, I prematurely put it on there. You should wait until after the faceplate is put onto the rest of the helmet before you glue this on. But this gives me an opportunity to show you how to take apart foam that you've already glued together, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Now I'm going to connect the bottom of the faceplate to the top of the faceplate, starting off at the sides just like that, carefully making sure that I get my edges nice and smooth. And once I get all that glued down, then I go ahead and connect the centerpiece to the bottom just like that. And now we're done with the faceplate. Let's move along and work on the side and top pieces. Now as for the top piece, I did cut the outer line in an inward angle, which when I glued it to the side piece, it gave me a slight bevel look right here. And I went and did that to the other side as well. Now notice where I applied all my glue. I glued all the edges, but around the ear area, I went ahead and applied glue on the inner surface. That way I can glue the side pieces from the inside or underneath. And now that I have these 2 larger side pieces glued together, it's time to merge them right down the center. And I'm going to use the surface of my table and carefully apply the foam together. This will help me get a really nice clean seam. And now that I'm done with the back, it's time to move along to the chin jawline area. Notice I had some V-groove undercuts glued there. I'm going to start by sticking the chin area together just like that, and then I'm going to connect the other side so that it doesn't flap around on me while I'm gluing things together. And you can see where I drew the inner patterns there. They just line up. That's how you want it to look. And then just go ahead and glue the bottom of the chin and the jawline area thingy, and it should look something like this. Looking pretty legit. I don't know, what do you think? And now that the big part of the helmet is done, it's time to work on the back of the helmet. Remember, I cut these roughly outside the edge. That way it gave me some material to glue underneath each other, and it's going to glue together just like that. I'm going to start off with the center and then go out to the edge, or the outer edge, and then carefully press everything into place like that. You should have something that looks like this when it's done. And this part right here was a little tricky, but when I folded it in half like that, it made it easier for me to glue everything in place and just follow the inner line, making sure not to glue beyond that. And notice how I glued the earpiece underneath the side of the helmet. And the same thing goes for the other side. I carefully aligned up all my corners, making sure everything was nice and lined up, and then I carefully lined up the earpiece to the side of the earpiece just like that. And before I glued the faceplate to the rest of the helmet, I wanted to apply some heat and put some curvature to the faceplate. And once that started to look pretty nice and legit, I went ahead and did the rest of the helmet. Notice I'm using a 4-inch PVC pipe with a cap to round off my helmet, but you can probably use a bowl or a ball. Now that I got everything all nice and smooth, it's time to connect the faceplate to the rest of the helmet. I'm going to start off with one side of the helmet. I'm going to connect the corners and the edges nice and smoothly, and then I'll work on the top of the helmet. Now this is where I kind of messed up by gluing that centerpiece of the faceplate together. I'm going to go ahead and take my contact cement thinner, which is Tanner Bond, and I'm gonna use a syringe and then apply it along the seam right there, and it's going to slowly break down that contact cement and come apart. Just makes it a lot easier than starting all over. And it sucks whenever you glue something in the wrong place and then you can't take it apart. Well, now you can, because I just showed you how. And the cool thing about it is you don't actually have to apply more contact cement, because as soon as that thinner dries up, the contact cement is good to be used again. So now I'm gonna carefully reapply that piece and tuck it underneath the back of the helmet where it should have been in the first place. Now everything is looking a whole lot better. Now it's time to add on those additional accents, which is these let's call them headphones. I cut these little discs out of 5mm craft foam, and I'm going to carefully align it to the markings that I put in there earlier. And then I'm going to take my wood burner, and then I'm going to carefully burn in these lines for the cheeky chin area. Something like that. This makes it a whole lot easier than cutting out several pieces and gluing them together. And it looks a little bit better too. Now it's time to seal the foam and get it ready for paint. Now the last helmet, I used this tacky glue stuff and it worked out really good, but this time it didn't do so well. I think I didn't thin it down enough, or it could have been because of that little space heater that I used back there to accelerate the drying process. Maybe it dried way faster than it needed to. Now I'm going to thin down some acrylic paint so I can feed it through my airbrush. I like to get it really nice and thin, but not too thin. You don't want it too watery, because you'll end up with a mess like this. Not really, that's user error. But before you can feed your acrylic paint through an airbrush, you gotta thin it down to a nice thin consistency, just like this. And I really don't have a formula for the thinning down paint because all paint are usually different. And most importantly, you have to filter out your little particles that's inside your paint that you didn't mix out well. I'm using some tool and I'm going to shove it into this homemade funnel just out of paper, and then I'm just going to pour my paint right through it. That tool is going to capture all the little particles and little chunks that can clog up my airbrush, because that's not good. I sprayed on a couple coat of red because Ironman red, and then I went in and paint the faceplate black because black is a really good base for metallic colors. And I'm using this Royal Gold that's been sitting in my paint cabinet forever, and which was a bad idea because there were chunks inside the paint. Couldn't filter that out, but I went ahead and did it anyways because why not, right? I got some screen mesh or some fabric that you can see through, and I'm going to glue them into the eye area of the helmet just like that. And I got some black fabric, which is some old t-shirt I wasn't wearing anymore, and I glued that into the side, which covered the side pieces up really well. And the best part of this helmet is that it's easier to breathe in because you got a couple ports there to breathe in. But yeah, so far so groovy, and this is what my Ironman Mark IV helmet is looking like. Now, if you're into this kind of stuff, I mean, if you're really into this kind of stuff, check the links in the description down below. It'll take you to the templates. And also have me an Amazon shop where you can go get your cosplay supplies and tools and whatnot. So check that out in the links in the description down below. Don't forget to like, share, and comment, and follow me on all my social network. I guess that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.